For those of you who don't know, I'm Eric Nunez, President of the California Police Chiefs Association, and I'm joined today by Brian Marvel, President of the Peace Officers Research Association of California, or PORAC. We are here today to announce a legislative framework for recruiting, educating the next generation of law enforcement professionals in our state. This proposal is the first step in a series of legislative proposals that we will collectively outline in our shared vision for the future of policing in California. The policies, programs, and recommendations we will present today will form the foundation of legislative proposals that raises the bar for recruitment and training standards while increasing diversity and opportunities for higher education. This proposal reflects more than 120 years of combined institutional knowledge of our two organizations in advocating for victim rights, higher training, recruitment standards, body-worn cameras, more community-based policing, and the elimination of quotas, to name a few. It is a product of a survey of proven best practices from throughout the country and is rooted in research from public safety experts. As leaders in California law enforcement and as representatives of the thousands of men and women who put their lives on the line to fulfill their oath to protect and serve the people of this great state, we respectfully offer this legislative proposal as well as our expertise to help develop the best path forward. A path that places our officers in the best possible position to serve their communities in the way their communities want to be served. As California continues the dialogue about improving the profession of law enforcement, it is important to keep in mind that we all share the same goal: to keep our families and communities safe. To achieve this goal, it is critical that all voices have the opportunity to be heard. This includes California's public safety professionals, and it also includes the voices of our elected leaders and stakeholder groups throughout the state who are equally committed to developing solutions. Developing new laws, developing programs and regulations governing the law enforcement profession is an incredibly complex and will have far-ranging impacts on public safety outcomes, both now and into the future. We all have a stake in safety and security of our communities, and so we must have a say in how these new initiatives take shape, obviously. This is why we are holding this press conference today, to proactively put forth our ideas and recommendations for our elected leaders, community activists, public safety experts, and other stakeholders to consider as we work together to ensure we only have the best individuals serving as members of our California law enforcement profession. Well, now I'm going to turn it over to PORAC President Brian Marvel to discuss the first step in making this possible: recruiting California's next generation of officers and what we need to do to prepare future officers for the rigors and adversities that they will face on the job. Brian?
Thank you for the introduction, Chief Nunez. As the Chief mentioned, I am Brian Marvel, President of PORAC. We represent more than 77,000 public safety officers and more than 940 associations throughout the state of California. We've been advocating for forward-thinking policies that will improve the practice of law enforcement for nearly 7 decades. We do not just want to improve our profession, we want to have the best trained and educated peace officers in the country by the end of this decade. To achieve this goal, the proposals that we're outlining today are the first of several that we'll be proposing in the coming weeks and months. To truly improve public safety outcomes and restore trust in law enforcement, we need to adopt a holistic approach to recruit, train, educate, and retain the best officers for the job. Jeffrey Fagan, he's a criminologist out of Columbia University, may have said it best. We want to recruit people who have the capacity for emotional regulation so that they don't get angry, they don't see authority challenges as personal challenges, they don't fall on use of force as a first response to a challenge to their authority. We want people who are good at planning and thinking ahead. We want people who have a capacity to learn from their mistakes. We're making progress, but we're facing new challenges. We've seen attitudes, tones, aggressions change towards law enforcement. Disrespect for law enforcement has become a cultural norm nationwide, making it even more difficult to recruit qualified men and women into the field. We've recently seen huge declines of dedicated men and women wanting to start and or continue their careers in law enforcement. In a recent survey of 10,000 officers, only 7% said they would recommend law enforcement as a career. Law enforcement departments across the state are forced to leave open positions vacant or hire unqualified officers, unfortunately. Police work has always been a dangerous job, but the conditions surrounding the job have worsened over time. That's why we need to rethink our approach to recruiting and educating officers to provide them with the necessary tools and skills for the job, especially when confronting resistance. We simply need to do more to recruit a more diverse pool of prospective officers, but we cannot stop there. We need to amend hiring practices such that we're seeking to mirror the demographics of the individual departments to those of the communities they serve. If a prospective officer has roots in a particular community, that should be considered part of the hiring process. Policing is a shared responsibility. By hiring men and women who have grown up in or have longstanding ties to the communities they serve, officers will feel an increased sense of belonging, empathy, and solidarity with the members of those communities. Sometimes we know will help to increase positive interactions and public safety outcomes. By doing so, we can increase the cultural competency of our officers. Our youth have grown up with images of the hard-nosed cop because that is what our culture and the entertainment industry have put out there as an archetype. To help repair the trust between officers and the communities they serve, we need to facilitate a cultural shift, both within law enforcement profession, but also externally in the way officers are perceived by the public. This will take some time, and it will also take increased resources and funding to support new outreach programs and the training and education our young prospective officers need to prepare them to meet the expectation and rigors of the modern police force. Recruiting the next generation of police officers is step one. We must do more to show the value of a career in law enforcement as an honorable profession worthy of pursuing for all California's youth, regardless of their background, race, or financial status. That's why we're proposing to establish a statewide recruitment task force charged with recruiting the next generation of California law enforcement. The task force will be comprised of active law enforcement community members, educators, who will actively perform education and outreach within our K through 12 system to recruit diverse and capable men and women into the field. Next, we're proposing to establish a statewide law enforcement education fund to provide financial support towards a higher education degree for individuals from disadvantaged backgrounds who commit to pursuing a career in law enforcement. Similar to the education grant programs that are offered to most promising young teachers, the benefits of this program are far-reaching. By combining increased outreach within our K-12 system with education grants, we can increase the diversity pool of prospective officers, incentivize and select only the best officers into the field, help young men and women earn a degree that will better prepare them for their law enforcement careers, provide a pathway to higher education for those who would not otherwise have the means to go to college. We look forward to working with our elected leaders to turn these recommendations into legislation that will help usher in a new era in community policing here in California. This proposal represents only one slice of a larger pie, and the first of many steps that will need to be taken as we look to reshape the profession to reflect our modern and shared values as Californians. I'll be providing testimony later as we proceed with these proposals in the coming months and years ahead. PORAC is committed to advancing this type of legislation next session. I'm now going to turn it back over to Chief Nunez, who will touch on the increased education component of our proposal. Chief?
Thank you, Brian. As you mentioned, we need to develop a training and education standards that meet the needs, requirements, and expectations placed on officers today. While training and education requirements for California's officers are already among the highest in the nation, we want to continue to lead and raise the bar. We need to take a deep dive into the kind of individuals we deem qualified to pursue a career in law enforcement and what education those prospective officers must receive before being certified to practice law enforcement in our communities. The 685 hours of required academy training is woefully inadequate given the breadth of duties and expectations placed on officers today, for sure. We are proposing to create a new curriculum to augment the training officers receive at the Academy. Our legislative proposal would require POST, California Peace Officer Standards and Training Commission, to work with stakeholders from law enforcement, community colleges, CSU, and UC systems, and community organizations to help develop a list of courses that officers must complete before they receive their basic certificate to practice law enforcement. These courses may be taken either prior, during, or after the completion of the Academy, but must be completed before an individual can obtain their basic certificate. We are also recommending that POST consider an allowance for prior experience, such as law enforcement or college experience, to satisfy some of the course requirements. By augmenting officers' existing training requirements with a new curriculum that includes classes that are more focused on mental health, social services, psychology, communications, and more, will better prepare our officers to meet the needs and requirements and expectations of modern policing. As part of this proposal, our goal is to also eventually work with the community colleges, CSU and UC systems, to create a degree specific to the practice of law enforcement and public safety that includes a multidisciplinary approach to capture all the various skill sets we believe the modern day police officer should come equipped with on day one of the job. Studies across the country show that higher education is often directly tied to better public safety outcomes. Today, California requires a high school diploma to qualify for a career in law enforcement. While both of our organizations believe this should remain a viable option, our proposed recruitment and education policies would again raise the bar and require more academic focused coursework that will better prepare officers for the challenges that they face today. Increasing education requirements and opportunities for higher education will level us up to other states who require higher standards, such as 30 to 60 hours of college credits. Just to quickly summarize, we're proposing that California should establish, number one, a statewide recruitment task force to provide education and outreach within our K-14 system and recruit diverse and capable candidates into the field. Two, a statewide law enforcement education fund to expand access to higher education for prospective officers from disadvantaged backgrounds. And three, an expanded curriculum specifically designed to prepare new officers to meet the expectations of modern police force, a curriculum that will provide the foundation for establishing a future degree in law enforcement. Collectively, these proposals will put us on the path towards ensuring California has the best and most highly educated officers in the country by the end of this decade. We need to continue to work together to ensure California is leading the way in forward-thinking policies, setting a national precedent, and attracting only the best and brightest to serve our communities. We look forward to working with our elected leaders, law enforcement agencies, and other stakeholders across the state to refine our proposed legislative framework for changing California's approach to recruiting, educating the next generation of public safety professionals next session.